So hello, Dr. Miaken Zeigler of Zeigler Chiropractic. Welcome to our spinal workshop where we are talking about allergies. And I love the conversation around allergies because a lot of people experience sensitivities to allergens that everybody is exposed to on a daily basis, right? We walk out, whether it's seasonal, whether it's something that's always around. The question is always, why does one person and why is one person sensitive to, I don't know, a dust where massive other people or massive amounts of other people are exposed to that same thing and their body doesn't respond the same way. And so this conversation on allergies, I think, is really beneficial to really understand if you have them, what's a good starting point to really, number one, understand what they are. And number two, get you on a path or a trajectory to support your body's ability to better process what you're exposed to so that maybe decrease or get rid of the allergy, which would be pretty amazing. So let's get started here. And we're going to start with defining an allergic reaction. So understand when you are exposed to an allergen or an allergy, it creates a response or a reaction. Most of the time when we think of allergic reaction, we think of big response, but it doesn't have to be a big response. Anything that is an allergen that your body is responding to is considered an allergic reaction. And how does that exposure to that allergy, what does that trigger within the body? And so when you're exposed to an allergen, it triggers an amplification of a signal by the immune system, which creates an effect, right? So a trigger is an allergen or an antigen. An antigen is a foreign material that's entered into the body, which your body does not recognize as itself, okay? So an allergen or an antigen causes a trigger that the body recognizes as foreign and requires a response by that immune system to take care of it. So when you have that response, that is called the effect. And the effect is really, what is the effector cell that produces the response that creates the allergic reaction? There's multiple cells here that play a role with an allergic reaction or an allergen response, but the most common is your mast cell. And your mast cell, if you've ever been exposed to something where you get hot, there's swelling or puffiness, you get redness, that's typically a response by the mast cell. And so what happens is it produces 200 mediators that create the signs and symptoms of a reaction. And most drug treatments like Benadryl, like Clariton, they're really looking at suppressing mast cell synthesis to stop these 200 mediators that create the signs and symptoms. So when you're using, say, a Clariton or a Benadryl or whatever it may be, understand that you're just stopping the effect. You're not necessarily addressing why the body is responding to an allergy in the first place, okay? So let's understand a couple more of the most common mast cell mediators, okay? So there's over 200 or about 200, but these are the most common. So you have histamine. Now, histamine are the most typical symptoms of acute allergies. This is where it produces redness, heat, swelling. If you get sneezing or hives, this is histamine. So a lot of times people think, oh, you have allergies, you need to take an antihistamine. I guess that's typically what the Benadryl, the Clariton fall under in terms of umbrella and what they're responding to. You also have serotonin, okay? So with serotonin, that is located in the brain. So it has numerous effects on mood, sleep, cognitive function. So some drugs used to treat symptoms for allergies, especially if you've got itching going on, are working to block serotonin. But serotonin constricts blood vessels, and it increases the movement of the GI tract. So that's where you can get abdominal cramping, diarrhea, if you are experiencing an allergic response to something like, let's say you've got prostaglandin D2, which constricts the bronchial tubes, plays a key role in asthma. It dilates, so it makes the blood vessels bigger, which can cause flushing of the skin or redness of the eyes. And then the last one of the most common is those leukotrienes, which increases the secretion and makes bronchial tubes constrict. Okay, so you can see when we talk about these most common mast cell mediators is what you're exposed to depends on which really play a role in terms of your immune system and the effect that you have in the body, right? If you've got tendencies towards asthma, and let's say you're exposed to some common pollutants like this weekend where we had some of the worst air quality in the world, right? We probably saw more prostaglandin D2, probably saw more leukotrienes showing up because of its impact on our airways. But certainly you can have all of them depending on how stressed your body is. And we'll go over that in just a second here. So next, I find this to be fascinating. These are all the symptoms associated with having allergies. And they're not your typical symptoms that you would think, right? We can all make sense of wheezing, sneezing, runny nose, glassy eyes, or wet eyes, itchiness, right? But some of these others we don't necessarily correlate to allergies. But let's look at these. Weight gain, fatigue. Typically when we have fatigue, we see more of a food allergy, which can be wheat, corn, milk, sometimes even chocolate. We see depression, right? Adolescents with asthma are 3 times more likely to develop depression. Anxiety, right? Do you know of anybody who's experiencing anxiety or depression? Yeah, probably, I don't know. I know quite a few people. So if, again, there's an allergy component with how your body's and immune system is responding to what it's exposed to on a daily basis, and it's impacting your mood and behavior, that can be a big deal. You're going to want to address that. We have muscle aches, we have joint pain. Typically joint pain can be, a trigger can be cow's milk. We've got headaches, insomnia, stomach aches, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, brain fog. All of these, you can circle back to a symptom of an allergy. So if you are falling into any of these categories, do you think it would be beneficial for you to maybe do some investigative work to say, okay, what could I be exposed to that's triggering an immune response where my body isn't appropriately processing that exposure, right? I find that this list is eye-opening for people to, people think, oh yeah, I don't have allergies. Well, maybe you do. So scientists agree the rise of allergies is not the result of genetic changes, okay? So the period of time we're looking at in terms of the prevalence of allergies, 50 years ago, we saw 1 person in 30 had allergies. Today, we're talking 1 in 3 have allergies. That's estimated 1 billion people worldwide suffer from allergies. Pretty significant number. So scientists are saying this is not a genetic response. This is not, we are not pointing to the genes as what's impacting the change with so many people experiencing allergies. So the period of time we're looking at, about a half a century, is too brief to allow for changes in our DNA. Instead, scientists are exploring how the environment in which we live and our modern way of life are responsible for this allergic epidemic, because it's a problem, right? 1 in 30 versus 1 in 3. So you've really got to look at what has changed in our lifestyle. What are we exposed to on a daily basis that's impacting how our body, how our immune system is responding to allergies, right? What's triggering that? And the big one we look at is what are the environmental impacts? So that is looking at you're exposed to outside of yourself, outside, indoors, and then what's going on inside of your body that can impact your body's response to the world. So let's look at that in more detail. So outdoor stress, being outside, the ambient air pollution due to motor vehicle exhaust. Let's just move this window so you can see this. So motor vehicle exhaust, in 1960s, there were 74 million cars on the road. In 2002, 233 million cars on the road. In 2010, 1 billion cars worldwide. That's a big number. We also have particulate matter or soot, which is the dirt and soot that is suspended in the air. It is a major component of air pollution. It's linked to exacerbation of allergic asthma, chronic bronchitis, respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, and hospital admissions. In fact, the World Health Organization estimates that inhaling particulate matter is responsible for 500,000 deaths around the world, worldwide, or each year. So we've got particulate matter or soot. Then we've got diesel exhaust. Okay, so the exhaust from diesel engines. They're mostly trucks and buses, account for 90% of the particulate matter in many cities. Many diesel vehicles are so dirty that they produce approximately 100 times more black particle soot per mile than gasoline engines do. So breathing exhaust changes lung functions, burns eyes, nose, throat, causes nausea, fatigue, headache. And then we've got the ozone and smog. And ozone is a main component of smog, the visible haze that sits heavily over many major cities. I know every time I go to Chautauqua, I read about the big cloud or the big smog cloud that's over Denver that has just been there since, I don't know, 1970s or 1980s. And then you've got sulfur dioxide. So burning coal and oil that are high in sulfur. So all of these make up our ambient air. And especially if we live in urban environments, right? That's going to be more impactful to how, when we're outside, how our system is stressed, okay? Versus if we live in rural areas, right? We're talking about a different impact. So we are in Denver and there's a lot more people living here than there was a year ago, than there was 10 years ago. And I think if there's anything that shows, you know, Denver's poor transportation in terms of highways, roads, and its ability to maintain the level of vehicles on the road, you know, just drive around Congress Park, drive around City Park, drive around Cap Hill, right? The number of cars that are on our roads significantly more. And so that means that we are exposed to a lot more exhaust, particulate matter, ozone, sulfur dioxide, all of those things. So we look at greenhouse gases that include CO2, primarily from coal burning power plants, cars, trucks, and industry that have warmed the earth, producing greenhouse effect. So this is from the WHO. So consider air pollution the single greatest environmental health risk we face. In 2012 alone, exposure to indoor and outdoor pollutants killed more than 7 million people. That's 1 in 8 deaths worldwide. So this is a major problem, right? And one that we can't necessarily change if we live where we do, right? So keep this in mind in terms of environmental impacts in the air we breathe and how that impacts our body's ability to process what we're exposed to and how our immune system's responding to that. Because we don't just have outdoor stress, okay? We also have the stress of indoor living, okay? So, I mean, I think we live in a day and age where smoking has been banned indoors, thankfully, at restaurants, bars, airplanes, right? but tobacco smoke can play a big role as far as the air quality and what we're breathing. Another big one is formaldehyde. So formaldehyde is in composite wood, fabrics, wood floor finishes, paint, wallpaper, emissions from laser printers, copiers, and personal computers. According to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commissions, formaldehyde is a product of combustion, so it is also generated from burning tobacco, natural gas, gasoline, and wood. Indoor air levels of formaldehyde can change depending on temperature, humidity, ventilation, and ozone level. It notes that both higher temps and humidity tend to increase formaldehyde emissions, right? So again, you think about the chemicals that are used in carpet, right? In, we say wood floor finishes, in mattresses, in any new furniture that we're getting, right? What are we filling our homes with? And then we're not getting great air circulation through our homes, that the air changes, the humidity changes, which increases potential emissions of things like formaldehyde that can contribute to stress to a system, right? And a system being a body. So I find this fascinating. Toxic loading. How much toxic loading is our body under on a regular basis? So every 2.6 seconds, a new chemical substance is made or isolated. Every 2.6 seconds. So since I've been talking, think about how many different chemicals have been made or isolated. The American Chemical Society has a database of more than 50 million chemicals that are in use somewhere in the world. Cleaners, fragrances, which can include perfumes, colognes, air fresheners, detergents, personal products, which are shampoos, conditioners, shaving cream, aftershave, makeup, cleansers, soaps, lotions, moisturizers, dryer sheets, new clothing, fabric. All of these things contain chemicals that can impact our body and how we are expressing health, but what we're able to process in terms of, triggering potential allergic responses within our immune system. Fragrances are made up from 3,000 different chemicals, the toxicity of which is not known. So getting ready in the morning, it's easy to think about women because we like to use more personal products, on our skin, in our hair, but getting ready in the morning, and we're indoors, may be one of the most toxic routines that we have in our day-to-day life, right? So again, I just want you to start thinking about what's changed in the last 50 years when we went from, what was the stat? 30, 1 to 30, one person to every 30 people had allergies, to 1 in every 3. So we've got a different world we're living in, that we are heavily exposed to a lot of toxicity. So we talked about outdoor or stress. We talked about indoor stress. Oh, one other thing, dryer sheets. I'm going to show you the book that I got a lot of this information from. But dryer sheets, the author talked about how one of the worst places you can be is your backyard, because a lot of people who use dryer sheets, that discharge or that outlet is open to your backyard, and it's blowing out all those chemicals right into your backyard. And you smell that fragrance. That is highly toxic, not only to our airways and our body, but it's highly toxic to, wash and clean our clothes with dryer sheets. So if you're using dryer sheets, I would challenge or encourage you to change and use something else. I use dryer balls. You can use essential oils to scent or fragrance those wool dryer balls. There's lots of things you can use, but that's one of the things that you can consider changing in your personal hygiene. Okay, so inside your body, right? So how is it the health of your ecosystem inside your body? And if you have any type of deficiencies, or poor detoxification pathways within the body, you have poor diet, you use drugs, prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, all of those things are going to contribute your ability and your immune system's ability to adapt and respond to what's going on in your world. So first, nutrition deficiency. If you're deficient in vitamin D, zinc, selenium, magnesium, vitamin E, C, essential fatty acids, those are going to leave your body less able to adapt to the toxic loading we experience on an everyday, an everyday world, right? Those vitamins, those minerals are vital for your body to process and support all processes within your body. Some of them are important for immune response. Some of them are important for cell turnover and growth. And if you don't have proper nutrition, you're going to be responding less resilient, poorly adaptive to when you are exposed to high toxic loading. So do you have a diet high in major allergens, right? Milk, eggs, fish, wheat, corn, soy, those are big allergens. Peanuts, right? Those can be major allergens in terms of food allergies. So are you regularly consuming those things? But I've got a whole list of other things that have been shown to be major allergens for some people. Nightshades, which are tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, peppers. Some people have major allergen to nightshades. They don't necessarily know that. Do you have a diet high in fast foods? That's a problem. Do you consume regularly non-organic foods that are made and laden with pesticides, fungicides, they're GMO? That's a problem. Are you taking any type of prescription drugs or over-the-counter drugs? That's also going to lower your resiliency when you're exposed to all of these things. Antibiotics can be great if you're having a bacterial infection, but guess what it does? It clears out your healthy gut because you need really good diversity in your microbiome in terms of healthy bacteria. But antibiotics, they are not specific. They clear everything out in your gut. And so it makes it really hard for your body to absorb appropriate nutrition. Allergy meds, NSAIDs, antacids, all of those can contribute to a body that is poorly adapted to your environment. And back to these antibiotics. 80% of antibiotic use in this country is fed to our farm animals. They're not given to people. So you have to look at what is the food that you're eating, how were those animals raised, or you can talk about plants, how are those plants grown, that can contribute to, again, if they were fed that food, guess what? You're fed that food too. So again, thinking about all of these pieces and the big picture, taking a step back is how can you reduce your toxic loading when you're outside, when you're inside, and then taking care of your body. Does that make sense? So I want to, let's see, how am I doing on time? Okay, I've got a couple minutes. So I want to end here with going over vital needs. And I want to look at it through a lens of allergens, okay? And after that, I just want to show you a questionnaire. I'm happy to provide it for you when you are in the office, but a questionnaire that can be really helpful for you to start doing some investigative work on your own in terms of where these allergies may be coming from for you, okay? But let's first go to vital needs. Because a lot of times the question is, oh, missed the whole slide. So what can lead to allergies? Exposure to environmental toxins, whether that's indoors or outdoors. Unusually heavy exposures to mold or pollen. It can be infection, chronic infection, depletion of body's beneficial microbes. So that's the microbiome. Those are the healthy gut bacteria that line your gut. Nutritional deficiencies, impaired digestion, extreme stress, whether it's psychological or physical. All of these One of these can contribute to an allergy. Okay. So again, put your investigative hat on when I show you this questionnaire, because your body does nothing unintelligently. There's a reason for it. And if you go back to that slide that talks about all of those symptoms that you could experience as a result of having an allergy, it's worth going through these one by one, saying, okay, have I had this? If I have, let's dive down that road and see where I can reduce, number one, my toxic loading, and then reduce my exposure to it. So, vital needs. I love the conversation on vital needs. And if you guys have been in the office, you've probably seen this triangle, but I love to use this triangle in terms of what is essential for life. Meaning, if I take it away, what is going to cause death, right? What's going to take life away? And so typically when we look at what is vital, what is essential for life, we start with nourishment, right? Food. How long can we live without food, right? Weeks. We take food away for weeks and we could survive, but food is important. Food is vital, right? What is more vital and more important than food? Water, right? So between food and water, what do you think will restore life the fastest, right? If you come along somebody in the desert who is passed out, you don't know if they've had food or water for days. Are you going to give them a granola bar? Or are you going to start with water, right? You're going to start with water because that is most vital, most essential to restoring life as opposed to nutrition. Both are important, right? But there is actually something more important than water. Air, right? When you're talking about enhancing life, what is going to be the fastest way to restore life? Oxygen or water, right? You can live minutes without oxygen. You can live days without water. You can live weeks without nourishment. What is the most important piece in terms of what can you, what is even more important than oxygen and air? And that is the chiropractic world, that is nerve flow. You have a great brain-body connection. If you sever that spinal cord, how long can you live, right? Seconds, instantaneously. So when we look at this vital needs triangle, we're looking at what is the fastest way to restore life or take life away. And when you look at this through the lens of allergies, okay, let's start with food. When we have food that is diminished in vital nutrients and minerals, when it's been grown using pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, when it's genetically modified, when it's been altered of all healthy nutrition, when it's been given dyes and fillers and it's been sprayed so that it preserves over the weeks-long time it takes to get to, say, Colorado. When you're talking about nourishment, if you have poor quality food, that's going to cause breakdown to a body over long periods of time. You may not notice it right away, but over years of poor quality food and exposure to those toxins, that's going to create a toxic loading. But it doesn't stop there because water, right? Let's look at this again through the lens of allergies. If we have poor water quality, if we are adding, can be controversial, but if we're adding fluoride to our water, right? If we have poor water quality, if we have lead in our water, it's a lot of places don't have updated piping, and so we actually see poor water quality just based on our poor water distribution, right? So we already are poorly nourished with our food, and what's also essential? Water. And if we've got any type of pollutants or additives in our water, that's going to cause stress. Or let's say we don't drink water at all, but we're drinking pop, or we're drinking juice, or we're drinking these liquids that are laden with sugar. That's going to impact, again, our body's ability to appropriately respond to our world because we are exposed to toxins day in and day out. And the food and the water that our body uses to nourish ourselves is already toxic. And then you add in this oxygen piece, that we live in an urban environment. We're breathing in particulate and soot and ozone and all of these things that impact and stress our air supply, which can directly restore life or take away. Okay, and then you get to the top. A lot of us are completely disconnected to our bodies. We have a brain that is not able to appropriately respond and process all of these stressors. And so we see breakdown and we see stress. Can you see why we have a chronic diseased population? In fact, 88% of the US population is metabolically unhealthy and at risk for chronic disease. So understand, give your body some grace, because it has been working hard to work through and process everything that we are exposing it to on a daily basis. And that's why we need to be so intentional about the things that we do to support our health and the choices that we make in terms of food and water and moving our body and resting and sleeping, because regeneration is also so important. So I love the conversation on vital needs. And when you look at it through the lens of allergies, I hope you start to get an understanding of, wow, yeah, the life that we live is really stressful and toxic to the body over time, because it never stops, right? So this is the last thing I want to share with you. This is the allergy solution questionnaire. I am happy to provide it for you when you come into the office, but I think it's really beneficial. So I took it from the book called The Allergy Solution. So I cannot take credit for this, but it's from The Allergy Solution. And so I love this because it starts with list your symptoms. So first, go through this left column and list all or circle all of your symptoms. And then they have other symptoms that you experience and really identifying, okay, how often do you experience these symptoms? Okay. And then you follow it up with this right column and then look at, okay, is there a rhythm or an occurrence of these symptoms and how severe can they get? So this is you really doing some investigative work on when does it happen? How often does it happen? What is the severity? And you start to get an idea of how you can reduce your toxic loading, specifically as it relates to your body's ability to process what it considers to be a trigger or an allergen to your system. Okay. And so I think this is a really great questionnaire, and it gives you, I mean, it's 2 pages. There's a lot of details there, but you can get into specific times. Is there specific locations? Maybe there's specific things that you're consuming or eating. So I'm happy to provide this to you when you come into the office. That is available to you. So I went over, I apologize. It is 6:23. I'm going to stop recording